Grishma. Dr. Grishma, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Welcome to the session.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so today, as I said, that we will, talk about PCOS. Okay, and how to deal with it, how to deal with the hormonal imbalances and everything. So yes, so before I start asking you questions, which I've got a list of questions with me, I would like to tell the viewers that they can post their comments, they can post their questions below in the comment section, so we can answer them as we proceed towards the discussion. Okay, so first and foremost thing I want to ask, and I'm sure even the viewers would like to know, that what exactly is PCOS? And how does it affect a person? How does it affect a girl? And what does it do?
Yeah. So polycystic ovarian disease or polycystic ovarian syndrome is actually a multi-organ involvement. Not everybody who has polycystic ovaries necessarily suffers from a lot of its effects. Sometimes it is very mild changes which nobody notices, and sometimes they are very severe changes that can affect a girl's life. Polycystic ovaries basically means that a woman's ovary that is supposed to release one egg per cycle, that is called the ovulation, is not able to do because of a certain disturbance in the hormonal milieu of the body, and multiple cysts which are fluid filled develop simultaneously in the ovary, which increases the size of the ovary. It affects the ovulation, and when multiple cysts are growing together, it causes hormonal changes. So the signs or the symptoms in a woman or a girl who suffers from polycystic ovarian disease or syndrome can range from just minor menstrual problems. Sometimes it's asymptomatic. So a lot of girls might not even realize they have polycystic ovaries because the cycles are going on fairly okay. It can go from menstrual irregularities to weight disturbances, weight gain. There can be androgenic effects, which means that male hormones increase in this particular disease, because of which different systems are affected again. Over the long run, it can cause infertility. So there's trouble in conceiving once you get married and you want to have a baby. It can also cause diabetes, hypertension, and cholesterol or lipid related disorders. So it is a multifunction thing, and it is a complex physiology. So it can range from asymptomatic to altering a woman's life completely.
Correct. Okay, so that's a good information that you gave over there. Just tell me one more thing, like how prevalent it is nowadays, because nowadays we hear about many young girls, especially in their puberty age or in their reproductive age, they are suffering from all this, especially PCOS more than. So how prevalent is it nowadays?
A lot of the things that have been existing in our communities and society since a long time are coming to the forefront nowadays because people are seeking out medical help. That is one thing. A lot of the times, infertility was one of the commonest things or phases in life where the woman realizes that there's something wrong with the cycles. Now the people seeking out fertility treatments is increasing, and while we are working up that, we realize that okay, she has polycystic ovaries, so that is affecting. So of polycystic cases. Secondly, the thing is that it is a genetic thing, so the prevalence sort of might be the same, but the women suffering from the disease, the symptoms or the signs of it increase because of our sedentary lifestyle. So from 50 years back or 40 years back, women used to be very up and about. In fact, everybody used to be up and about. Now we have at the desk, jobs. We are not doing a lot of work. Plus, our diet has changed. A lot of trans fat, refined foods, and things like that. So, important thing about polycystic ovaries is that obesity can cause it, and it is caused by it. So, it is a very vicious cycle, which is becoming more. So, you are right. Definitely, we are seeing a lot of girls that are coming up with this.
Correct. Yeah, and I would just like to add to this that, as you said, that lifestyle, disorders, and nowadays people, especially in this lockdown also that is going on, people don't have a specific routine to follow. So they are just sitting at home, eating everything, not following even a sleep routine. So all that, inactivity, all that will affect you in some other way.
The stress also plays a havoc on
Correct. Yeah. So moving on to the next question, do people or do women who have PCOS, do they have difficulty in getting pregnant? Because that's mostly found in that age, where they are conceivable age, or people who are just women who are newly married. So if they find out that if they have PCOS, what are the chances of them getting pregnant?
So it does interfere with a woman's chances of conception. Because the whole process of conception requires regular periods with regular ovulation happening at the right time. Ovulation at the right time cause fertilization at the right time, and then a chances of a successful pregnancy. So yes, a lot of women that we see, thin, obese, whatever age, sometimes younger, sometimes older, a lot of them do have irregular ovulation because of polycystic ovaries, and it does affect the chance of conception quite a bit. So not only that, polycystic ovaries per se, it is not a disease. So there is no medicine that a gynecologist is able to give to correct the disease or make it go away. So the management of those women also, or that couple also requires a multi-system approach to help them conceive. So it's going to be an immediate thing as well. It requires certain time for the ovulation to become normal. A lot of changes that are required for that. But yeah, infertility, we do see a lot of women who end up having polycystic ovaries on investigation.
Correct. And you must be dealing with so many, women who come to you, and
it's a challenging thing because different causes of fertility are there. But polycystic ovaries, it does require hormonal management sometimes. After trying all the things that could have possibly helped, it does require hormone.
Correct. And some of them might even require some counseling, because they are in that age, that teenage where you have to tell them exactly what it is and how to deal with it. Yeah, correct. And one more thing is, PCOS is normally, associated with some insulin insensitivity, or they PCOS affected girls. They are supposed to be on a sugar medicine as well, that is glycomate or glutamate or something. So how is it that how much of diabetes or all these things or sugar insensitivity is going to be like prevalent in girls suffering from PCOS?
So polycystic ovaries, basically it interferes with three important hormones. One is our menstrual hormones, the estrogen and progesterone, which are responsible for regular periods. The second is androgens. Androgens means testosterone, which is actually a male hormone, which in normal under normal concentration, normal level, which is very low. But in polycystic, ovaries, women suffering from polycystic ovaries, they tend to be a little higher. Now, this and the third hormone is insulin. So insulin and androgen have a kind of a relationship which causes insulin sensitivity to reduce in the body, which means that the insulin amount stays the same, but the organ's ability to respond to it, which means use up the glucose that is being there in the body by that insulin, is reduced, which means that the body produces more insulin because the body is not listening. The signals are not being responded to. So more and more insulin is produced. So it's a cycle that causes ultimately insulin resistance. And insulin resistance means that the insulin will cause weight gain. It will cause, hyperglycemia. It will affect your cholesterol levels as well. Over the long run, it can cause hypertension and arterial cardiovascular diseases. Some because of these hormonal changes, women in the older age group are susceptible to cancers as well. The cancer of the uterus, that is the endometrial cancer, is a common finding. So the important thing is the kind of relationship between these hormones, which is disturbed in polycystic ovaries, and insulin resistance. One of the most important things that we want to break the cycle of, So like you said, there are certain ways, especially diet, that helps better utilization of sugar that is produced in the body, so that you don't put a heavy load on the insulin that is already there, So when you take certain kinds of foods, which are like, you would know this better, of course, you leave out the trans fat, the refined foods and excess sugar and things like that, the body responds, and there is a better likelihood of the cycles regularizing after that.
Correct. Yes, so diet becomes very important when we are dealing with this kind of an issue. Correct. So now people or girls who are not aware of whether they have PCOS, or what are the signs and symptoms that they should look out for? I mean, are there any tests that they can do? Are there any signs that might show that, they have some PCOS, or even any hormonal imbalances in their body?
Yeah. So, starting from menarche. So menarche means the age at which the girl gets her first menstrual period. Okay. That is the first step of your reproductive life. So whether you get menarche at the right time or not tells us whether the hormones are all playing their role or not. Delayed periods or even early onset of periods should arise some suspicion. After, of course, regularity of periods is something that you notice and you know that whether this is happening normally. Excessive bleeding during periods or excessive painful periods, these are also certain signs that you look for. Signs of hyperandrogenism, that means excessive hair growth on the face, upper lip, over the back, like that. Your neck creases or the folds of skin appear darker, which is also a sign of insulin resistance or hyperandrogenism. Weight gain which is not proportional to your lifestyle. So you are trying to maintain a certain thing, but despite that, and of course, if you happen to do a random blood sugar finding sometime, you realize that, okay, it's surprisingly high. So a lot of girls, will not suddenly wake up and realize that they have polycystic ovaries. It will be something that helps them reach out to. So it means that these are the symptomatic cases. A lot of asymptomatic cases who are getting, maybe a little longer cycles or shorter cycles will not turn up till they have infertility problems.
Correct.
So these different things that can make you reach out to a gynecologist or suspect that something may be up with your cycles.
Okay. And I guess they can do an ultrasound and also find out, right? Once.
Diagnosis of polycystic ovaries, because like I said, it's not a disease as such. So we don't have one polycystic ovaries. It is, 2-3 tests that we can do. Ultrasound. Ultrasound is a gold standard. So, that will require a nice scan which will show the ovaries, showing the multiple cysts larger in volume. Certain hormonal blood tests like your FSH and LH levels. So the reversal of the levels that happens, that also points towards the polycystic ovaries. And then there are little complex tests for your insulin resistance, hyperlipidemia and things like that. So it is a multi-system. I will not be able to just do one test and say, except the scan, there is no one blood test to diagnose.
It's difficult to diagnose it with just one test. I'll say that.
If we see a girl that is coming up with, any of these symptoms or 2-3 of these symptoms, because the management is, sort of easy to start off with. I can tell her to work on her diet, on her exercise levels, on her, other changes. I will ask her to start doing that instead of doing, like 10-15 tests to diagnose polycystic ovaries.
Correct. Okay. Thank you so much. That was very informative. Okay. Now I have one question over here which says that what is the exact difference between PCOS or PCOD and hypothyroidism? I mean, both are hormonal related. So exactly, do the symptoms overlap each other or is it different? How is it different?
The basic pathology of both the things is very different. Although both are commonly seen more in women. Of course, hypothyroidism is seen more in women than in men. But the important thing is that one is going to interfere with your menstrual cycles much more than hypothyroidism. Second thing, hypothyroidism is something that I can test with one, a thyroid level. So
yes.
Hypothyroidism is easy, and at the same time the management is also easier because I just have to supplement the right dose of thyroid hormone, and we will see miraculous changes in that lady, her weight, her appetite. Also, if we are asking for a basic difference in polycystic ovaries, you don't get that slowness of movement or so excessive sleepiness, lethargy, tiredness, poor concentration, focus. All these things are more hypothyroid. Polycystic is menstrual. It starts with menstrual, and then related to that we will see the other symptoms.
Correct. There's so much in depth that we are getting to know from you. So much that, very insightful though. Okay. So the next question is, we'll turn to infertility because you are also an infertility expert. So to just begin with, what is exactly IVF and, in vitro fertilization, and who are these people who need them? How does it, go about? What is the procedure and everything? Can you give me a brief about it?
We hear a lot of IVF, discussion these days because one, availability is much more now than it used to be 10-15 years back. The number of probably infertile couples is the same, but the couples reaching out at older age groups are more. So infertility treatment is multi-step. So it's not just directly IVF. That couple has probably been thoroughly examined, both the male and the female partner. We start off with giving the right advice in terms of trying to conceive. So the way you maintain relations, the right time to plan your relations, and whether you are doing it properly, and the timing is correct. After that, we move on to a little bit of a help in terms of IUI, which is intrauterine insemination. In
Mm-hmm.
case there is a male factor, we purify the sperm sample, make sure that the best sperms are chosen, and then we inject that into the woman's uterus. That is the next step. So multiple things are tried, and then the last thing, the most effective amongst all these, is this infertility IVF management, in which basically we are trying to take the best sperm, a good egg, and doing it outside. We are trying to create healthy embryos in a lab setup, and then we, on the right date of the woman's cycle, after preparing her endometrium to receive that embryo, we transfer it. Okay, then like a natural conception after that. After that, the rest of the pregnancy is the same, like a naturally conceived pregnancy. The steps, the milestones, everything will be the same. But this is the part that we help with initially.
Okay, okay. And I mean, for women is suffering from PCOS, is it mandatory that she has to undergo IVF fertilization, or can she conceive naturally as well? I mean,
Course, anybody can conceive naturally, as long as the cycles are there, the eggs are there, should not be a problem. But certain cases, so most of the cases we try to regularize the cycles. Okay, that is the most important, because in polycystic ovaries, the ovulation, which is the release of the egg, does not happen at the right time. Sometimes does not happen at all. So we try to regularize it in such a way that she releases the egg. If she's releasing the egg, the chance of conception are like any other couple. Sometimes though it's difficult, we have found that the quality of those eggs, it's not just the egg, sometimes the quality of the egg differs from a woman to woman. So in case she's not responding to lifestyle changes, she's not responding to the other hormonal management that we give her, sometimes it is necessary, but not it's not the rule for sure. Not all the polycystic women will require IVF. No.
Okay, okay, okay. And is there any particular age, that they can opt for IVF, or is there any particular benchmark or anything say under 40 or something that they can go in for IVF? Is there anything like a benchmark that they
There
set?
is. The beauty of IVF is that sometimes even if the woman is older and she herself does not have good eggs, we are able to take donor eggs. If the male does sperms or good sperms related to age, we can take donor sperm. So the availability of this is vast. It can be applied to this, but of course, as gynecologists, it is our responsibility to tell beyond which a pregnancy is a health risk for a woman. So there are certain ages beyond which the 9 months of pregnancy can endanger her health and her life. So beyond even 40, we are doing IVF for a lot of women these days. But there is a age where we have to tell a woman that this might not be the best age for you to go through the 9 months of pregnancy. The risk is too much. But otherwise, there is age is not always a factor. A lot of times it is, but not always.
Okay, okay, okay. And one more thing I wanted to ask you, like, if we go to, let's jump to like menopause now, okay? Like, about every woman above 50 years old, she faces a thing called menopause, where her hormones start to, get imbalanced and everything. So can you just tell us in detail, like, what exactly is menopause, and how does it affect a woman? Does it affect everybody? What are the signs and symptoms of it?
Yeah.
How do we come to it?
So it is basically the hormones that are going on a decline. So related to once the eggs are getting over, the hormones that are related for the menses also start declining, and these hormones that, like I have said, they play a role in all the systems of the body. So as they are going down, they are going to cause certain changes. You won't hit menopause on one day. It is a period of gradual decline where you don't get periods for 1 year continuous. We will term you as postmenopausal or menopausal. So the perimenopause period is very difficult for a lot of women because it's multi-system. Because of the declining hormones, there is a very important mood change that is there. There is an irritability. There is you feel blue, tired, lethargic throughout the day. Your skin changes, your body's changing. A lot of times we have the bone density. So estrogen is a very important hormone for maintaining bone density in women. So the bone density comes along with that, the risk of certain cancers related to women also go up. There is involved, and not just health risk wise, but how the woman feels herself also. A lot of things are changing in her body, and she's not able to come to terms with it. So it's a very important time period where more women should actually be getting counseled by a team, but not a lot of them out. Important thing for me to put out is that you must start, any perimenopausal women, we start calcium supplementation, because reducing bone density is a very important thing, and regular follow-up for cancer screening. That is the basis. Other than that, you give certain supplements which are rich in estrogen, which can help to alleviate the symptoms a little bit. And for the very severe cases, the women who are suffering a lot, we can give replacement as well. So it is a safe dose of estrogen that we will give in different ways, maybe skin patches, whatever it is, that will help to smoothen the transition for her.
Okay. And it's also said that menopausal women are more prone to osteoporosis and all those kind of, those things, because the calcium depletion is a lot.
The diseases, estrogen is a very important hormone for maintaining the health of a lot of organs in women. So the risk, cardiovascular disease, bone density going down, so osteoporosis, fractures, a lot of things. There's a risk of that.
Correct. So is there any, if we talk about osteoporosis and menopause, is there any particular age from which women can start taking calcium supplements in order to not, face that kind of an issue?
So recent studies actually say that from 30 years onwards, once you hit 30, women should be supplementing their calcium, because a good continuous calcium supply will ensure that beyond 40 and 50, there is enough calcium reserve in that. In addition to that, vitamin D is something I want to point out, because amongst Indians, vitamin D levels are always found to be low. So we can do supplementations that anybody can start at any age, in fact. But post 30, you should start taking calcium.
I think I am a bit late. Okay. And one more question I've got over here is coming back to hypothyroidism. There's a question saying that in hypothyroidism, does a woman does feel any hair loss or something like that?
There is
related.
There can be hair loss. There is skin changes where the skin appears dull, sometimes excessive dryness of the skin, excessive sleepiness, like I've said. Metabolism is slow, so weight gain is seen. Yes, but yeah, hair and skin changes are common in hypothyroidism.
So you prescribe any medicines, any oils, anything for them? Any skin?
The first most important, like I said, is that she will respond very well to thyroid supplementation, because it's the deficiency of thyroid that is causing all this. So give the right dose of thyroid hormone and make sure that she takes it regularly and continuously. One thing I would like to point out, if there are women who are who are on medication for hypothyroidism, there is no phase at which that you can stop taking hypothyroid medication. Okay, so it's not that you take it and your hypothyroidism is gone. No, your body requires a thyroid. So your thyroid hormone is being produced all life. So you can't take supplementation just for 3 months and assume that the thing is going to go away. Continue that always.
So it can be managed very well.
It can be managed well, provided that you are taking the medication, the right dosage, and complying with it.
Correct. And there's one more question saying that how to manage this PCOS. If somebody has a PCOS, what are the immediate things that they can do? After visiting the doctors, do they start with the medications, or what is the right way of managing this?
If you feel that you have maybe any of the symptoms of polycystic ovaries, or you suspect yourself to be having polycystic ovaries, yes, reach out to a gynecologist. The gynecologist is not going to directly start you on any kind of hormonal medication. It is going to be a counseling where the gynac also will refer you to a fitness expert and a diet expert, maybe a coach as well, who will talk you through what polycystic ovaries means and what it is going to mean for you for the rest of your life. It should be a strong approach. So first and foremost, the doctor will give you the methodology, which is the best followed diet control, exercises and lifestyle changes and things like that. So you can start off with that. After that, yes, if your periods are causing a lot of problems in your life, excessive bleeding or very irregular periods, then the doctor will start off with very basic medicines to regularize those cycles. One
Correct.
insulin drug that is very commonly given is metformin, like you said,
Hmm.
glycomet. The metformin is an insulin sensitizer. It is not necessary to bring down your sugar levels or does not mean you're diabetic. It is given to make sure that the sugar in your body is utilized better.
Okay. Yeah, so even I would like to say something like about PCOS over here, that PCOS can be well managed. Okay, so there are certain foods, if you know include them in the diet, it will be managed better. So actually it's like a holistic approach that you should always look at when we are talking about PCOS. It's just not diet, it's just not medication, it's everything, your lifestyle basically. So that will affect.
It's not a disease. It's a certain lifestyle change that you will have to make.
Correct. It's more of a syndrome, so that it is reversible also to some extent. Right? And you always have to see the long-term effects of it. Because short-term, if you stop doing something, it will again. Is there any chance of reoccurrence? Is what I want to ask you.
That's the same thing like with hypothyroidism. These hormonal things in the body, like you say, if you think about any hormonal diseases like diabetes, hypothyroidism, ovaries, there is no treatment because the hormones, the organs producing the hormones work on a very fine balance in the body. From outside, I can start giving hormones which will regularize the things for a certain time period. As soon as I withdraw those hormones, the body is going to come back to its disturbed state again. So any syndromes, hormone related syndromes don't have a cure. It is not like it is going to be lifelong. For women till at least you hit menopause, especially polycystic ovaries, is going to be a lifetime management. You'll have to have regular follow-up with your doctor, and you'll have to keep up on your lifestyle changes and other things as well.
Correct. Okay.
Only
and sorry.
Yeah, so symptoms might abate for some time after you've tried all these things, but if you give them up again, the symptoms will be on the rise. So the thing is there that you have to be disciplined.
Correct. And one more thing is, even if the woman is conceived, is there any, like, if she has a history of PCOS and if that woman has conceived, is there any difficulty in conceiving for the second time if the woman is planning a second child or something? Is there any problem there?
So what we have found is sometimes pregnancy itself kind of regularizes the hormones a little bit for a certain time period. Okay. Pregnancy is a state where all the hormones are low. Once the pregnancy ends, the lactational amenorrhea period is there, then there's a gradual rise. So it's a kind of reset thing. So she might be able to conceive immediately after that if she tries. But generally, like I said, her return of periods, regular periods after the pregnancy is done, whether she's ovulating or not, all of those things. So it's not like it is going to make it easier, but the chances there might be a window where conceiving better than a little later.
Okay. And there's one more question over here. Gauri asks that in my case, where due to PCOD, my ovulation doesn't happen. So I would like to ask if there is if it is diagnosed early, which is in my case, it didn't happen. Can it be cured?
Yeah. So, like I said, ovulation not happening is the main problem where conceiving becomes difficult. So there is something called ovulation studies where the doctor, the gynecologist will call you from day 2 of your cycle and call you a day to study at how the eggs are growing. Okay. Eggs are growing at a good rate and ovulation halts. So the doctor can give an injection, which is called a trigger. Okay. So it's a trigger to pop that oocyte out and cause ovulation. It can be done. It is done in a very easy manner as well. It is regular follow-up and an injection when we want the egg to burst, the ovulation to happen, and then they will tell you to plan your relations accordingly.
Correct. Okay. So much information we are getting. Thank you so much, Dr. Grishma.
Tanuja, I'm enjoying. Thank you so much.
One more question I'm getting over here is, how early can cervical cancer be identified? And if yes, then what are the initial symptoms of it?
So cervical cancer itself is one of the cancers that can be diagnosed before it becomes, untreatable. One of the few cancers. So that is why cancer screening for cervical cancer is very important. screening for cervical cancer means regular pap smears. So a lot of girls are advised from their menarche onwards to start getting regular pap smears. At least once you are sexually active, you get pap smears. Nowadays, there are HPV DNA tests, which is a blood test that can be done to detect. It is one of the few cancers that is caused by a virus. It's a human virus. So if you're able to pick it up at the pre-malignant stage, it has a long pre-malignant stage after which it becomes a cancer. So if you're able to catch it in that time frame with these regular pap smears and HPV DNA tests, then you'll be able to halt its progression and you'll be able to, prevent cancer.
Okay. Okay. So it is mostly with medications and you can stop and then you can go on to, making some changes in your lifestyle or how?
You're getting pap smears regularly. The pap smear basically takes a few cells from around the cervix and studies them under a microscope. The thing is, the cells that are going to become cancerous, they start showing changes. Before full-blown cancer, they're already showing some disturbances which we are able to pick up through pap smear. And if we find it, we can either, get rid of that particular part of the cervix through a surgery, do a punch biopsy and remove that part, or we can do local cauterization and things like that. So we can like there.
Okay, you can halt the spreading of the cancer. Okay. Fine. So I guess this is the end of my questions. I'll just quickly check if there are any more questions.
Yeah.
Yes. Let me just check.
While you check, I would like to point out, since we were talking about cervical cancer, we have a vaccine. So I think cancer that has a vaccine to prevent cervical cancer, we have human papillomavirus vaccines, which are can be given to girls who have not yet had a exposure to human papillomavirus, which happens after your first sexual intercourse. So if young girls who have attained puberty and have not had sexual relations, that is a time period which they can vaccinate them. So you can reach out to your gynecologist and ask them more about this vaccine.
Okay. And is it like available in the hospitals? Can doctors?
Very simple administration. So it's an easy way to go about it.
Okay. There's one more question since we are talking about cervical cancer. There is one question saying that is it managed properly through lifestyle changes? I mean, once it's detected, I think you have answered that already, that you have to undergo certain tests for that and then you can localize it. So we'll skip that for now because you've already answered that. Yeah, I guess we have pretty much covered all the questions and I think this would be the end of our live session. Just before we conclude it, can we just quickly summarize about PCOS and hormonal changes and how to again manage it very well?
Yeah. So polycystic ovaries is where your ovaries are not releasing eggs regularly, because of which there are multiple cysts and the size of the ovary increases, which can cause hormonal disturbances in your life, ranging from menstrual problems to weight gain to infertility to long-term cancer risks. Wide variety. You can range from asymptomatic to very severe changes. Important that if you detect there is anything, if you're suspicious about any kind of change in your body, in your cycles, or any kind of discomfort, reach out to a gynecologist. Easy to diagnose and start off. It is very simple to manage as well. It will require some discipline on your side and some motivation. Definitely, you can reverse all these symptoms that are associated with polycystic ovaries, and reach out to the right people at the right time. That's all I can say.
Yeah. So all the girls over here who are watching this session, I hope that you reach out to the gynecologist, you reach out to Dr. Grishma Desai, and thank you so much, Dr. Grishma, for joining us.
It was a pleasure.
It was a really useful session. Yeah, and I really hope that people, I mean, especially girls, will come forward, will find this session useful, and they will go for the diagnostic tests, and they might come up with some proper management and with medicines and
important not to be distressed about polycystic ovaries, because nowadays there is a lot of discussion about it. Polycystic ovaries will do this, it will not let you conceive, you will not be able to have this, you'll have cancer. A lot of discussion is happening, and a lot of times I find that there are groups and chats and so much that is being actually run by somebody who has no medical background or any kind of health related background.
Correct.
So there is a lot of that are around as well regarding this. It's important to manage this psychologically also, because a lot of girls are in distress because of the weight changes and things like that. So do rely on internet and Google and all these pages and things like that. Just start off with a doctor, with a fitness expert, with a diet expert, and you will be on track.
Correct. Yeah, so I mean, for me also, if I say that there are many clients which I have, they have like, the PCOS prevalence is almost like in 40% of the clients that I am dealing with. But if, guided them very well, very properly with the diet, exercise and everything, the weight gain or the weight loss especially would be really smooth in their case. So there is a misconception that PCOS, people or women suffering from PCOS, they cannot lose weight or it's very difficult for them. It's not the case. If you manage it quite well, then, it is done very easily.
Sure.
But yes, you have to, make sure that the lifestyle is changed.
I'm
Correct?
Sure. I'm going to be, having an Instagram live, and we will talk about the diet, what an important role diet plays in these, and we can talk extensively about, the food, about in these.
Correct. Yeah. So, do you have any questions? Anything that you want to say? You want to ask? Anything?
So yeah, I don't think we spoke on this at all. In basic, if I were to have PCOS and I say that what is the most convenient way I can control my symptoms using just diet, done kind of thing is done with just simple dietary changes. What would you suggest to these?
So first of all, as you said, that we have to take into consideration various issues like obesity or their unhealthy eating habits or inactivity. So as I said, it's a holistic approach. So if they just make like a 50% changes in their lifestyle, it causes a lot of change in their PCOS. So for example, when it comes to diet, what they can do is probably cut down on all the whites in their diet. Okay, so for example, maida or refined flour, refined sugar, salt intake, all these things they should cut down. Rice also to some extent. Okay, and they should incorporate more of the fibrous carbs or the complex carbs. So the carbs which are more in, if you know what is high GI, high glycemic index carbs. So that if you incorporate, then it will be managed well. So more of whole grain cereals, more of sprouts and the pulses and everything. They can incorporate more fruits and vegetables, and also protein, because what happens is in our Indian diet we more focus on the carbohydrates and proteins are gone for a toss. So we have to make sure that the protein and carbohydrate intake is matched. And at the same time, your fiber intake also becomes important. I always keep telling my clients that there are no 3 food groups, there are 4 nowadays. One is carbohydrate, protein, fat, and fiber. So, yeah, correct. So half of your plate should be of, some fibrous things in your diet. So that's how you manage it. Then exercise, when it comes to activity, I wouldn't expect that you go to the gym all the time, do some vigorous exercises. A mild 30 to 40 minutes of any physical activity. Just make your body a bit flexible. Don't, make your body stiff. Yeah. So that is one thing. And one more thing is about your sleep patterns. So many people wouldn't know this, but lack of sleep also affect your weight and the other, medical issues. Right. So a good sleep, undisturbed sleep is very, very important. Be it 5 to 6 hours, 7 to 8 hours, how much ever you need. You have to make sure that you get your enough sleep, enough rest. And one last thing that we focused on was the stress levels. So if you are a person who are having a lot of stress levels, who's taking a lot of stress, heavy working hours, not resting enough, all these things will take a toll on your body, and it will show up in some other ways. Some signs and symptoms will show up. So it's going to be a holistic approach towards it, and I'm sure you agree with me on that.
This was very well put. Thank you, Anuja.
Okay, so as you know, I'm a dietitian, so I deal with these kind of diets also. So all the girls out there who are really planning to work on their PCOS can obviously come to me and for the diet guidance and everything. And yes, so thank you so much. I think we should just end this session right now. It was so useful, Dr. Bhishma.
My
It's a
pleasure.
pleasure to have you here.
My pleasure as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and stay in touch, yeah?
Bye bye. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye. Take care. Bye, guys.